And good morning. Welcome, everybody. MLB Strategy Show here, presented by Awesemo and presented by OddsShopper, of course. I'm Eric Lindquist. How's my dude Adam doing over there? Adam, at Ship My Money, I should be able to speak here this morning. There's other things you might not be capable of doing this morning, like driving a vehicle. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. Excited for a new week. Had a brutal weekend of DFS. So, still kind of feeling the effects of coping with that, but also excited for, new things to gamble on.
Oh, yeah. It's yesterday. So Saturday was fantastic. MMA. My DFS lineups weren't very good, but had some good bets that kind of were thrown into the mix. That went about as well as possible. And then Sunday, Sam Burns almost backdoor a W at 80-1 for me. And that would have just made my entire golf year. I digress. He lips out a 4 or 5 footer there on 18 in the second playoff hole. So I should probably be more in your camp right now. I did have beers and just kind of tried to not think about it, but I'm going to think about it for the next week or two. Cause it's so from a sports betting perspective, Adam, have you started to dabble a little bit more into, you said you almost went to New Jersey this weekend for some of the MMA fights. Would you have been putting down some coin in that?
Yeah, if I was in Jersey, because I was going to go hang out with friends. If I'd been there, I would have bet because I wouldn't have been playing DFS, and why not? But no, it's still not. I can't do it from Maryland, at least easily. It's legal, but they haven't actually put anything in place yet. So for now, I haven't been. I'm sure this time next year I will be.
Well, come to Vegas this weekend. Come hang out with me.
Yeah, why not?
Let's just do it. Just get on a plane. Let's ride. But we should also probably get to this slate. Well, there's 5 games. We have plenty of time. We might as well shoot the shit here at the top of the show. But as everybody's getting in here, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We've got 100. We're going to get to a couple hundred here in a couple seconds. Just hit that like button. It goes a long, long way for us. As I said, we're presented by OddsShopper. I was going to find some kind of an interesting segue to go from sports betting into OddsShopper. I failed miserably. That's what happens at 8 in the morning out here, out west. Your brain is still starting to function a little bit, but don't worry, Adam. I got coffee.
Nice. I do not. I wish I did.
Oh, no. I was just saying this is in terms of you thinking that I'm a meth addict already.
Got it. Yeah.
I'm bouncing off the walls on the daily, but I'm ready to ride. How about you?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Cincinnati, -169 here at Cleveland. We've got Luis Castillo, who is just a DFS anomaly. We love this guy, but he also brings pain and suffering on the daily here. 4.09 ERA, 1.39 whip here for the season. I feel like he's not been on a main slate in a while here, but that's a bummer because the last 4 times out of the gate exceeded 22 DraftKings points in every single one. Now he's drawing this Cleveland team that they're definitely still not good. Jose Ramirez, Franmil Reyes, you can play them every slate. We talk about that, I think, every single time out, but everybody else here, it's disturbing when Bobby Bradley goes yard and Cleveland puts up 7 runs as mega chalk, but whatever. Luis Castillo today, how much do you love him?
Yeah, I like him a lot here. I'm kind of surprised that Cleveland's implied run total is as high as it is at 4.1. This is just a bad offense, and we've seen plenty of mediocre to bad pitchers just tear this team up recently. Now you have an actual good pitcher in Luis Castillo going up against them. His strikeout numbers have been up recently, as you were mentioning, because for the season, it's been just kind of a weird year for him. He used to be somebody that, struggled with power, but struck out a lot of guys. This year, he's done a better job of limiting home runs, but he's only struck out 23% of hitters. Recently, though, the strikeout numbers have been up. He's struck out at least 7 guys in 4 straight starts, at least 6 in it looks like 9 of his last 10. So the strikeout numbers have been better. This is a good matchup for him. The only thing kind of working against him is that he's $10,000 on DraftKings. Freddie Peralta against the Cubs is only 10,500. So, not a big price gap there, but I do think it's a good spot for Castillo.
And on the other side of it here, Sam Hentages, you know what? I'm not even going to try anymore here. It's just what it is. He's not a very good pitcher. 497 expected slugging, striking out underneath 21% of bats, walking dudes at a 12% clip. Cincinnati, going to be chalk here again for the, 50th consecutive slate. They're coming in as the highest owned team here in our first run of ownership. That'll fluctuate here and there as we get closer to lock. There's some individual hitters here that really stick out, but Sam Hentages, how are we feeling about him? 0%?
So hang on, you mentioned the ownership. Are you looking at yesterday's or is it just not refreshing for me?
It might not be refreshing. Oh, I'm looking at yesterday's. You know what? Look at you. You know things. I have the DK cruncher up here as well. Let me pull that here while we're going. Yeah, no, I was looking at that. I didn't even realize Tampa Bay sitting there a little bit higher, but I digress. I mean, it's going to be hard to believe that Cincinnati at this implied run total, 5.5 here right now, sitting just behind the Yankees and White Sox. But then you get the batters that kind of fit the way that they do. Specifically, Castellanos 4K is the guy that I'm individually plucking out. Suarez should be back in there at 4K after taking the day off yesterday. Naquin 2.6K if he ends up in the lineup as well. Pretty easy to stack them comparatively than, Tim Anderson and the likes of all the boppers there for the Yankees. So Cincinnati, do they stick out for you for sure?
Yeah, and I'm with you. I assume they do get ownership. It's a good spot. Sam Hank, damn, I can't say it either.
It's the dumbest name to read ever.
Yeah, it's I feel like I've said it before.
Family tree needs to end. It's like Game of Thrones. Just stop it.
But yeah, he's allowed a 239 expected ISO to righties this year, 196 to lefties, and it's just a good Reds lineup. I mean, it's a park downgrade getting out of Cincinnati, but still a good matchup for them. We'll be interested to see how ownership shakes out because you do have the Yankees and the White Sox also with very high implied run totals. Obviously, it's a 5-game slate, so all three teams are going to get ownership, but there's going to be one of them probably that ends up kind of fading and getting less ownership than the other three, and that's the one that I'll end up wanting to play the most. But it is a good spot for Cincinnati. Nick Castellanos' salary in particular is just still egregious. Should be in cash lineups. Should be one of the highest owned guys in tournaments as well.
Yeah, Mike Moustakas 6.2K coming back. Castellanos 4K. Okay, makes sense. Like what? I don't understand things. I feel like my job should just be DK pricing. Just allow me to DK price every single slate and everybody will be happy.
Yeah. And I mean, somebody needs to just go through and just, I don't know, it kind of stands out when you're like scrolling like, oh, Nick Castellanos should be $1,000 more. Somebody fix it.
And I know that they want to probably not have it be perfectly like in golf. They make salaries based off the odds and there's $100 gaps and they try not to have salary duplication nearly as much because then it becomes kind of a pick 'em. And I understand how it's supposed to work, but when you have broken stuff like that happening, where it's just like a randomness that cannot be really contemplated, like Nick Castellanos is going to be crazy owned going up against a lefty with the wind blowing out 80 plus degrees, 70% plus humidity. It's just a dumb spot. And then in tournaments, you have to decide what you're going to do with a 30% owned Nick Castellanos on DK. I don't enjoy that. Maybe other people do. I digress. Let's go to the Cleveland side. For me, it's always Jose Ramirez for Emil Reyes. I suppose Bobby Bradley decided to just ruin the slate yesterday, specifically on FanDuel where he was 2,200. Your favorite site for sure. But how does Cleveland look?
Yeah, I mean, pretty brutal spot for them. Like I said before, Castillo doing a better job of limiting power this year. Walk rate's still a little bit high, but that doesn't get you a ton of fantasy points either. He's just a good all-around pitcher. Ramirez and Reyes, like you said, pretty much every day are both relatively strong options. You have a really cheap leadoff hitter, most likely in Miles Straw at 2,200 on DraftKings. But overall, I think a pretty unappealing spot for the Indians.
I don't know really where else to go with this. You should play some Castillo. It's going to depend on where his ownership comes in at. Like, it's hard to say, like, is there a threshold? Because I don't know what that threshold is right now. Pulling up the top pitchers tool, we'll see if that ends up getting refreshed here while we're on stream. But Cleveland, is there like a bat that stands out that you'd want to pair with Ramirez and Reyes specifically?
If Bradley's in there, so I think he's questionable for this game, but if he's in at 3K, he does give you some power upside. I think that would be the guy that I'd be the happiest to get to. I could see, if you are running Cleveland stacks, Austin Hedges at 2K flat is going to be kind of useful just because he's a catcher. Miles Straw is a good value, but I think as far as guys that I actually want to roster, not just looking at their salary, but actual, guys I think maybe could do damage, Bradley's the third guy.
Anything else from this game whatsoever?
Nope.
All right, let's move ourselves along. I'm going to slow it down a little bit because, again, we've got 4 games to cover here. We're going to talk a lot about good old OddsShopper, I'm sure, coming up here. But Milwaukee, minus 192, going up against Chicago Cubs. The wind is blowing out in Wrigley today, which you'd normally say, hey, well, there's that run total. It's 9. Obviously, the wind's not blowing in. But that's pretty much all coming from the Milwaukee side going up against Alec Mills because you got Freddie Peralta on the other side. Now, the Cubs have nearly a 4-run implied total. That just tells you that the wind's blowing out there. There's definitely some home run risk that exists, but Freddie Peralta, I mean, he limits the hard contact. He is a fly ball pitcher, 22.8 degrees average launch angle here on the season, but it's not getting hit hard. He's limiting X batting average to 160, expected slugging 267, nearly 35% K percentage. As long as he's not walking dudes, how do the Cubs make contact today?
Yeah, really, really tough spot for them. Also worth noting that there's major rain concerns in this game. So this might not even exist by the time we, do the deep dive in Live Before Lock later. But assuming it does play, still, just a brutal matchup for the Cubs. Peralta leads the slate with a 34% strikeout percentage, only 0.8 home runs per nine, 3.68 xFIP. He's just been fantastic this year. And then you have a watered down Cubs team since they traded most of their good hitters at the deadline. So really, really good spot for Peralta. Really difficult to like the Cubs, I think.
Loco in the chat. Good morning, good sir. Our dude, always watching, always keeping us apprised of everything. Flat out says this Cubs game going to get canceled. Don't at me. Well, people will probably be adding you because it's their job to just ask you things about weather related concerns. But I know you're going to keep everybody apprised of it. He just does a phenomenal job for us, keeps us updated with lineups and keeps us updated with scratches and with weather. And he does a little bit of everything here. But yeah, I definitely am looking at this. This could be some major weather concerns. Right now, less than a 50% chance of rain here. We'll see what it looks like as we get closer up to lock, but we'll talk about it like it's theoretically there because we don't have much else to talk about. I mean, we could do a raffle. We could do trivia. Like, what else could we do for 45 minutes leading up to lock or leading up to the end of this show, should I say? Let's talk Alec Mills. I don't want to talk Alec Mills. 16.4% K percentage, limits the walks, limits hard hit percentage. There's going to be a lot of lefties here in this Milwaukee lineup for sure. Switch hitters like Garcia and Escobar there as well. It's not looking like a great spot for when Alec Mills if the wind's blowing out, correct?
Yeah, I mean, pretty tough spot. He's actually been good this year. Strikeouts, not necessarily from a fantasy standpoint, only a 16.6% strikeout percentage, but only walks about 5.5% of hitters, has a 3.84 xFIP, 0.72 home runs per nine, and he is fully stretched out. So, we don't have ownership right now. I could see taking some shots on him, like among the really cheap pitchers. I think like he's better than Carlos Hernandez against the Yankees, but probably won't really be too necessary on the slate. And I think, if this game does play and with the wind blowing out, it is a pretty good spot for Milwaukee. I'm guessing they get less ownership than teams like the Reds and the White Sox and the Yankees. They do have some really cheap bats. You have Omar Narvaez at 3,800, Avi Garcia at 3,800, Rowdy Tellez at 2,900, Colton Wong 3,600. Like, it'll be a really, really easy team to stack.
I mean, yeah, it's going to be super easy. They're going to be very, very popular. I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, actually, after looking at the pricing, I take back what I said about them probably being lower owned than those other three teams. Nope. My guess when we get the top stacks tool is that the Brewers probably are the most over-owned team.
I agree. Yankees and Kaufman, but I mean, it's
pricing
going to be close.
The Yankees are cheap too.
I feel like the Yankees, just because there's nobody that's crazy owned. Giancarlo Stanton, 4.5K. I think it's going to be kind of an interesting board because Castellanos is going to be your highest owned batter. I'm pretty positive of that at 4K. It's hard to imagine at the outfield spot where you're playing three that he's not going to be crazy owned. But I am curious. It's going to be very close between Milwaukee and I think Milwaukee could end up as the highest owned. You're correct about it simply because of pricing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but you're right too. Like, Milwaukee's underpriced, but so are the Yankees. And then, Castellanos is going to drive up the Reds ownership. So I am interested to see how it looks. I just think that the Brewers are going to have a lower top stack percentage than the Yankees and the Reds. And the ownership is still going to be there just because they're so cheap.
Agreed. Hopefully this game plays because I do not want to play a 4-game slate. We're getting into batter versus pitcher territory at that point. And
on FanDuel will be 3.
You know what? Maybe you need to play over on FanDuel today, Adam. There it is again. I think every show I'm required to try to get you to go over to FanDuel and at least put a lineup or two together. And of course, you're going to go out and win everything the first time that you do. But you know what? They might want to fix their product first. Chicago Cubs, 3.9 runs, 3.9 implied runs there on the other side. Sorry if there was a beep. there was. For me, Gregory Dykman, not going to be available here on the DK slate, which is so weird because he was available in Showdown yesterday. I was firing the Showdown because why not last night? Cubs and White Sox. But Rafael Ortega up against Freddie Peralta sticks out a little bit. Contreras just so expensive going up against a guy who just shuts down righties and limits hard contact. But is there something from the Cubs we can kind of pick and choose because it's still nearly a 4 implied run total?
I don't think there's really much individually that stands out. I mean, Peralta's just so good. He doesn't really give up anything to anybody. Even against lefties this year, the strikeout rate's lower at 29% compared to 41% for righties, but still only a 122 expected ISO. So, I mean, he's been worse against lefties, but still extremely good. I think that so it's kind of just, grabbing the best hitters that the Cubs have and just hoping to get lucky. I mean, Ian Happ at 3,400, Ortega at 2,800 are reasonable salaries. Contreras, probably the best hitter in the lineup, but he's expensive. But there's no like one individual spot where you look at it and you're like, oh, I think Peralta's going to struggle here.
So gross. I will also throw it out there just because there's an opportunity for it. Robinson Chirinos could always end up as catcher. He's actually been pretty shockingly decent since showing up. 52.4% hard hit percentage, 576 expected slugging. Right now, the projected lineup here is Contreras, but in the event you get Chirinos in there as well, that's a source of salary savings that is kind of shocking how good he's been up until this point. But I expect some kind of regression there. I feel like he would have been still hanging around the league if he had been somewhat effective in his last stint. And maybe it's just a flash in the pan here, but shockingly good, throwing it out there. Anything else here to kind of cover for this game?
No, I think that's about it. Just saw someone in chat say that NBA cash games are probably the easiest, which is about as far off as you can be.
Yeah, NBA cash games?
Yeah.
Are they talking NBA Summer League cash games?
No, they're just talking next season. I'm assuming he means like it's easy to figure out who to play, but didn't think it like a step further and realized that everybody's just really good at NBA cash.
NBA cash is the hardest streets to be successful at. I'm trying to think of a cash game that is, so I think MMA is probably the easiest. Is that fair?
I don't know, because like there's not that many casuals. NFL is the easiest for sure.
Okay, NFL definitely. Oh my God. Speaking of NFL, what a segue you have created for one Eric Lindquist here in this spot. We've got 2 new YouTube channels you guys need to be checking out. We have the Season Log Fantasy Football and Sports Betting channels. That is at Awesemo Fantasy Football on YouTube, and then Awesemo Odds channel also on YouTube. Give those a like, give those a subscribe, give them all of the love and attention that they deserve, because they are going to keep you prepped and ready to go here for the NFL season that is coming up so shortly. We are right at like the 1 month mark here for the week 1 start. We've got preseason that's starting up Thursday. Is going to be just pure insanity here. We've got Matt Kajewski taking care of everything for you on the projection side. Lofty putting out video content all the time. It's unbelievable the amount of time and effort that they've put into this. All you have to do is go to the top bar to that pinned message in YouTube chat. Hit the subscribe button on both of those, because that goes a long way for us and allows us to keep doing all of this free content that we have in front of the paywall for you. Also, if you're checking out college football, Betting You, check out Betting You. It's a new podcast with Matt Kajewski and Ben Rasa, my dude, in the golf streets. They're so sharp at college sports, and it's probably the most, if we're talking about like cash games on the draft, the DFS side of things, I'm telling you, college football is probably the most profitable sport to bet. There are so many inefficient lines. They teach you how to spot them. They're showing you who their picks are for the entire season between Heisman, SEC winners, MAC winners. Doesn't matter the conference, big or small, they have you covered. They are into winning money, and they will teach you how to do the same. So check that out. It's called Betting You. Go to Spotify and Apple. Check out those podcasts and start putting together a portfolio of futures in college football, because I think there are some really, really inefficient lines. And if you want, come out to Vegas this weekend and come bet them with me, because it's going to be pandemonium. Let's go to next game on the board. Yankees. This one will take a little bit of time with, because I think it definitely deserves it. Yankees minus 169 at Kansas City Royals, 10 total runs here in this one. 6.1 implied here. It's gone up to 10.5 now as I'm looking at the board. 90 degrees there in Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City. This lineup's just still stupid. It loses a little bit of luster with no Anthony Rizzo here, specifically up against Carlos Hernandez. who, was somebody that was shockingly getting played quite a bit. I feel like his last slate out, which is understandable, 28.1% K percentage in a limited sample here so far, 45.4% hard hit percentage. So he's given up some fly balls alongside having a K percentage on this side, specifically Carlos Hernandez. I mean, is he like the ultimate boom bust option on this slate?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, he's got good stuff. The guy throws almost 100 miles an hour. He's capable of getting strikeouts. I think that the strikeout numbers come down a little bit going forward just because he is starting now. He's made 16 appearances in the majors this year, but he's only made 4 starts. So typically you're going to see the strikeout numbers come down. At AAA, he struck out 23% of hitters. But still just, really good stuff. There are a lot of strikeouts in the Yankees lineup. So it's conceivable that Hernandez could have a good start, but it's also just more likely that the Yankees light him up and do what the Yankees offense should do. Like you said, Rizzo missing does make the lineup a little bit weaker, but you're still talking about a very, very good lineup here. So certainly a path to success for Hernandez, just because there are so many strikeouts in this Yankees lineup when you have Aaron Judge, followed by Gallo, followed by Stanton, followed by Voit, followed by Torres, but also a really, really difficult lineup to navigate.
Got Logan that just kind of triggered me a little bit. He said that he misses KBO. I do not miss KBO because my model could not deal with all the similar last names. It just couldn't.
Pain in the ass.
It was the most ridiculous. I mean, you had to really want it. Like looking back on it now, we had to really want it in order to, like, there was nothing else on. So that was your only choice of sports. But
yeah, League of Legends, like DFS was just go to sleep at 10 Eastern, wake up at like 3, make League of Legends lineups, and then sweat KBO news.
Yeah, out here on the West Coast, it was even worse because it's like you'd start watching at 1:30 because it was like just on the threshold of I don't need to go to bed yet, and then all of a sudden the sun's coming up at 6, and you're just finishing sweating your lineups, and it's like, all right, well, this is not healthy activity. And then you're just at home drinking anyway, because what else did you have to do?
Yeah, I was going to say during that time I was staying at my mom's. And so I still remember the first time she gets up for work at 6 a.m. and I am sitting on the couch watching Korean baseball with like a bottle of wine next to me. And she's just like, okay, what is happening right now?
Pandemic times were good times. Sometimes it was intermittent, but yeah. I absolutely do not wish that. But yes, it was easy to make some money in the old KBO streets. I had one of my bigger FanDuel hits on it. Took down a GPP like, I don't know, the first or second week of KBO. Then I just poured it back in for the next like month and a half. It felt like people got sharper immediately.
Yeah, I lost like 40K at KBO. And the most frustrating part was, so that was like the first time I've built my own model from scratch and like just done all my own stuff. And the frustrating part was like I figured out something I had done wrong after like months, but it was just like all the action at that point had dried up. So like I started doing a lot better, but it was also just like, oh, I lost so much money because I had like a typo here.
Oh, that's not fun. It was definitely the hardest, the most amount of work that I've ever put into. Like I feel like I put in the work, but this was like another level. And so I do not miss those days, but I digress. We're back to regular baseball. I guess you got to be careful what you wish for because a 5-gamer of KBO, I feel like there was a lot more unknowns than a 5-gamer for an MLB slate where everybody's got a million pieces of coverage over it. It is what it is. We're going to have a tough time figuring out what to do with this Yankees team every single time because they are chalk. But I do like Carlos Hernandez simply because it sticks out that K percentage here on this slate. On the other side of it, though, an interesting guy too, Jameson Taillon, K percentage not nearly as much, 24.1%, still gives up some hard contact, 41.4%, but definitely limits getting guys on base. Carlos Hernandez actually kind of putting them next to each other. It's just simply a matchup thing, and Carlos Hernandez better K percentage. Taillon on this slate. I'm curious to see where he comes in. Kansas City, not necessarily the best up against righties, but how do you kind of handle a team that's kind of lost Scherer, lost a number of pieces here? If Benintendi's in the lineup, I suppose that's an upgrade, but how does Taillon look for you today?
It's a really interesting price point on him. He was $10,200 in his last start against the Orioles.
He paid it off.
Yeah, he had like the best start of his career, struck out 10 guys. And then now he's down to 7,800 where realistically, I think he should be, but he's also going to get quite a bit of ownership at that salary, I would guess, because, when you look in that price range, there's not a whole lot there. I mean, you have Zach Thompson and Joe Musgrove from the final game, but not a whole lot. And it is a pretty good matchup against Kansas City. The weather, I think, is what's driving the run total here, and you do have a 4.5 implied run total for the Royals, but pretty weak lineup. The top is still fine. Merrifield, Santana, Perez, Benintendi, but once you get through those guys, Hunter Dozier strikes out a lot. Ryan O'Hearn's a pretty flawed hitter. Lots of strikeouts in Michael Taylor. The bottom of the order is just so weak. Taillon should be able to rack up fantasy points there. It's just a matter of, can he mitigate damage against the top of this order? And I think the salary coming down really does make him look like a good option here.
It's such a weird spot for me because Kansas City only strikes out at a 22.3% clip up against righties for the season. That's kind of a bottom end of the pack, 24th best or 24th worst. I don't know the right way of saying that. Yeah, it'd be like the 6th best in baseball at that number. ISO, though, goes down to 143. That's 3rd worst in baseball. WRC plus 85, tied for 5th worst in baseball. So it could be something where Taillon just ends up getting some extra work there, goes 6-7 innings here in this spot and can kind of put up fantasy points that way. I don't know if it's going to necessarily be straight through the cage because I don't know if you know this. The Baltimore Orioles are really bad too, outside of Cedric Mullins. I suppose they've definitely have shown out a little bit here of late with some of these guys. Santander going deep yesterday. That was good times. Anyway, back to the slate here. The Yankees lineup. That's kind of what everybody's going to be looking at. We don't have any of the ownership up here yet. 8:30 out here on the West Coast. We'll see if that can kind of pop up here before the show, and we can kind of address that on the way out. But how do you not just love stacking them up every day?
Yeah, I mean, again, Carlos Hernandez hasn't been bad this year at all, but a lot of those numbers are out of the bullpen. He's held righties to a 144 expected ISO. He's held lefties to a 148 expected ISO. But this is obviously not your average team. There's just so much power here, so many good hitters in this lineup. It's, again, supposed to be hot in Kaufman as well. So the Yankees look, I think, really good. Definitely a spot to pay attention to ownership because you do have the White Sox in a good spot. You do have the Reds in a good spot. If the Chicago game goes, you have the Brewers in an okay spot. So definitely want to be, cognizant of ownership and not go crazy if the Yankees are getting a lot of it. But I do think that it's favorable hitting conditions. It's a really good lineup, and it's not a really expensive lineup either. The only 2 hitters over 5K are Aaron Judge and Joey Gallo, who both should be over 5K.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it looks at for me too. I don't like going to, Dover's been pretty darn good. He's got some shocking numbers, actually, I would say. Brett Gardner, I will never play. And if I ever play him, send help to my home because there's something wrong. On the Kansas City Royals side, Whit Merrifield, Carlos Santana, 3.5K, both of them. It's kind of crazy to be looking at those kind of numbers for both of them. I don't know where the ownership's going to come in on them, but I would assume that those seem like pretty much career low numbers for at least the last couple of years for both of them. But what kind of sticks out to you from the KC side?
So Taillon has struggled with left-handed hitters in particular this year. 207 expected ISO, 207 actual ISO, giving up a little bit of power there. So I think a $3,500 Carlos Santana, if you are looking to leverage against what I assume is going to be a popular Taillon, Santana looks pretty good. Benintendi at 3K flat is a pretty nice salary. You can always go to Merrifield and Perez. Merrifield is also really, really cheap, even though they are right-handed. And Taillon has been much better against righties. They're just, good hitters. So I think the top of the order for KC actually looks decent. Like they are just so cheap outside of Salvador Perez. You can always mix in a $2,300 Ryan O'Hearn as well, or, a $2,700 Dozier for power. So I think Benintendi and Santana from the left side stand out. The price tag on Merrifield stands out. And then Salvador Perez, pretty much always one of the best catcher options.
Pretty much always. I don't know what to say as far as top stack potential here. We'll kind of see. I'm hoping that can get updated here, but I want to basically say the Yankees. How do you look at them in the context of the slate? Would they be your favorite raw point producer if you were basically saying, I need to stack up a team, I need to score the most runs?
Yeah, I think so. It's tough because I don't think their matchup is quite as good as Cincinnati's or the White Sox, but they're also just such a high upside, such a potent offense that I do think they would. My assumption is they end up being number 1 in the top stack tool when that gets updated.
That's what I'm hoping to, and I don't know what the ownership's going to be comparatively. We'll get to this White Sox game here next, but I guess the way that I wanted to phrase this question was, how inclined are you to, if you see negative leverage, like 2-3 points of negative leverage, and you're seeing 2 or 3 points of positive leverage going towards the White Sox or towards Milwaukee, How inclined are you still to just say, I want to stack up the Yankees because that's the team that I feel like can go out and get it done?
If so, you're saying if the Yankees are going a little bit over-owned than the White Sox and Brewers, for example, are going under-owned?
Like a theoretical question.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I typically just end up playing more of the White Sox than the Brewers because, again, the Yankees are likely to do well, but it's more of doing the same thing every slate for the entire season. I think you end up coming out ahead by just, taking the lower owned teams when they all have a similar range of outcomes, even though, personally, I would love to be on the Yankees, but if everyone else is going to go to the Yankees instead of these other teams, I'm going to just take the other teams and hope that the Yankees don't go crazy, even though I kind of think that they will.
I guess this isn't the strategy show. So I guess for me, I'm just talking it through because it feels like the Yankees are still coming in crazy high owned, even more so than what we can predict. Because people like playing them. They like playing the shiny new toy. They put in Gallo in the middle of that. You're able to play Judge, Gallo, and Stanton on the same team. Like that seems pretty unfair and ridiculous. I think Rizzo out probably helps a little bit, although Luke Voit, 3.7K gives you some savings. For me, it just comes down to being so sensitive to that ownership. Regardless of what the top stacks tool comes out at. Yeah, I love the Yankees. I will like the Yankees probably every single slate, but I'm probably not going to like them when you put the ownership next to their names.
Yeah, exactly. It just kind of comes back to and probably in MLB more than anything, any other sport, you just kind of have to disassociate what you think is going to happen from ownership. Just plays such a big role because there's so much variance, there's so much volatility. You are going to put yourself in a lot of difficult situations if you look at slates and say, man, I just don't know how the Yankees are going to fail. The answer is because it's baseball and they're going to fail a lot, even if it is a great spot. So you kind of just have to consistently put yourself in a position to, be overweight on those second, third, fourth best teams, hope that the number one team that everyone is playing fails. And that's when you win money. It's a lot easier to win money that way than to say, oh, well, everyone is playing the Yankees, but I'm just going to play more of the Yankees. Cause then you're just competing with so many lineups. It's just harder to win over time.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the nice lesson to have on this 5-gamer is just being cognizant of what the ownership's coming in at and making the best decisions you can every single day, as opposed to saying, I think X, Y, Z is going to happen. There's a range of outcomes. And in baseball, that's what we're kind of embracing. We've got Nick. Nick is not having a good morning. Sorry, Nick. That's a tough break. That's not a fun way to go with it. And, betting totals more than sides, I could probably get with that. I probably tend to bet more props than I do anything else in MLB. I think that's a good way to go. And a good way to go find and do that is on OddsShopper. And that is the presenter today of the strategy show. The biggest edges in sports betting, shopping for the best line. That is flat out what you need to be doing. If you're in Vegas, you can go to the Wynn, you can go to Caesars, you can go bounce around, find different spots. But I'm telling you, you can do it from the comfort of your own home so long as you have legalized sports betting in your state. Check out exactly what those lines are at all of those sports books by going to OddsShopper. Find the best line for the games that you're playing. We've got Jordan Klein, the best producer in the game, named Jordan, simply flat out pulling up everything here for us as we're going over to OddsShopper. Bet them in real time. They change and fluctuate here in real time. The NFL is going to be here before you know it. We already have some week 1 lines here that can be placed. We've got team futures, player futures, everything that you need to be able to find the best lines. And you've got the sports books listed at the top, no matter where they're at. Patrick Mahomes plus 500 for MVP. Well, he's plus 450 at another sports book. Make sure you're finding that 500. That's $50 free. If you're betting $100 on that, it's $50 free in your pocket simply by taking the time to go over there and find exactly where you need to be placing that bet at. Over the course of a long haul, just like we were talking about with ownership, finding the best line is the thing that's going to take you over the top and be a positive EV sports bettor. So check it out. Constantly be using it. Keep your eyes peeled here as we get closer to NFL season, and just be ready to fire those, because those half points, those 1 points, that's the make or break kind of decision stuff. So check out OddsShopper. Get comfortable with it here now. I promise you, the interface, everything looks glorious over there. Super easy to use. Check it out. Let's go to our next one. Chicago White Sox, 2 games to go. Minus 191 here at Minnesota. 10 total runs here on this one. Lucas Giolito, So this cat is very, very good at pitching baseballs, coming off of a terrible game, though. How do we kind of handle that here going up against a Minnesota team that we don't really know if Donaldson's going to be there or not? He's got the Q mark next to his name, but Minnesota just kind of went off there against McCullers. That was my favorite under-owned stack yesterday. Not even being a homer, just Lance McCullers kind of had it. Looks like he's going back and forth between being a good pitcher and a bad pitcher. Lucas Giolito, are we looking at the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think Giolito is a little bit easier to trust than McCullers. Doesn't have quite the issues that McCullers does. Only 7.5% walk percentage, 27.7% K rate is the highest on the slate. He has had home run issues this year with 1.5 home runs per 9 innings allowed. The Minnesota lineup, even though it's not the best lineup, they do still have power. Like they're not. There's a few, MLB lineups now at this point where it's just like, yeah, these are all minor league hitters. This is a terrible team. The Twins aren't great, but they do still have guys that have power. Kepler, Rooker, Polanco, Donaldson, Garver, Sano, Larnack. Like these guys all can at least hit mistakes. And so it's not quite as safe a matchup. Splits wise, Giolito has been fine. 175 expected ISO to righties, 106 to lefties. He's actually done a better job against lefties because his changeup is so good. So there's nothing really individually that stands out for the Twins. I do think that it's a good spot for Giolito. 9,300 is a reasonable price tag. But kind of like we were talking about with the Yankees, compared to the White Sox and the Brewers and the Reds in terms of ownership, I'm going to be really interested in how ownership is projected to play out between Peralta, Castillo, and Giolito, at those top price points, because the range of outcomes, I think, is pretty similar for all three of those guys. They all have good matchups. They all are good pitchers. Peralta, has the highest strikeout percentage by a pretty wide margin, but they're all guys that can just go out there, give you 7 innings and strike out a bunch of guys. So I'm really interested to see how the ownership plays out, and I'll probably lean towards whichever one's the lowest owned.
Probably the same here, especially because there's only 10 starting pitchers that we have to pick from here. And so more so even than like when there's 30 of them, when we have like a 15 game slate or even a 10 game slate, I think that there is definitely an ownership game because it's still a lineup spot for you. And it's still a lineup spot where there's some high variance between them. And I will embrace it as well. I can't really say that I probably like Lucas Giolito the most I like Joe Musgrove the most, especially at that price point. But Freddie Peralta is so good. You can't tell me that if he's going to come in a little bit lower owned just because he's because he's more expensive, and people want to jam in bats, but maybe that's not even going to be that big of a problem. I haven't built lineups. I don't think anybody's going to be building lineups at, 11:40 Eastern time here. Maybe somebody can, and explain to me how you do such things, but I'm going to wait for the ownership here. Freddie Peralta, if he comes in a little bit lower owned, and something tells me he might based on this Joe Musgrove spot, but Lucas Giolito might come in the under-owned grouping out of everybody there and give me all of it for sure. I love this White Sox team. I will continually be targeting all of these starters. Beau Burrows here on the other side, somebody that I don't know anything about. Limited sample size here, 671 expected slugging so far, only 14% K percentage in the majors here. Those are not good marks. Talk to me about him.
Yeah, he's barely pitched at all this year. At AAA for Minnesota, he's made four appearances, 1 start. Prior to that, he was with the Tigers at AAA, nine total appearances, 1 start. And then he's made 5 appearances out of the bullpen so far in the majors this year. So not a whole lot to go on, but doesn't look very good. He's not a highly regarded prospect. Fangraphs has him number 37 on the team, not in baseball. So, not a highly regarded guy, almost 25 years old as well. He's in his, 5 appearances in the majors, 14% strikeout percentage, 16% walk percentage. At AAA, not a lot of strikeouts either. Just seems like a guy the White Sox should have success against. Granted, there's been a lot of guys they should have success against and they still manage to fail. But again, that's just baseball. So it really just comes down to, how is the ownership going to look between the Reds, the Yankees, the White Sox? I would love to get to a lot of Chicago here. I think the pricing is reasonable. You have a really, really, really expensive Tim Anderson and Jose Abreu, both at 6K or 6,100 in Anderson's case. But other than that, nobody is above 5K. Moncada's at 4,900. Everyone else is 4,400 or less. So it's still going to be, I think, a relatively easy team to stack. And if they are going to get a little bit less ownership than teams like the Yankees and the Reds, then I'll really like them.
So on the 28th, Burrows threw 63 pitches here. Was he still with the Tigers then? No, he was not. All I know is I love that we're getting cast-offs from the Tigers. It's a great sign for his promise going forward. But Beau Burrows, 63 pitches, only had 13 on the 4th here of August. So I'm not sure what that pitch count's going to look like. It looks like there's a long reliever that is listed over on DK as well, Charlie Barnes. So he is somebody that I pitched that same Cincinnati game. I can remember. Let me see if it's not pulling up. There we go. 80 pitches, yes, against Cincinnati on the 4th of August. People say I don't watch baseball. Leave me alone. Cincinnati here. 80 total pitches here. Got shelled. Minus 2.14 DK points, 6.23 RA, 1.62 whip. I think if you're playing one of the two, I mean, Charlie Burns is 5,300, but he looks like he's the guy who could take up more the bulk of the workload here in this spot. How do you feel about possibly Charlie Burns being your cheapest viable pitcher here on this slate?
I would rather take my chances on Carlos Hernandez at 6,200, or
Same.
if the game plays, even Alec Mills at 6,400, then go to Barnes. I mean, his minor league numbers aren't very good. He's only made 2 appearances in the majors so far. They've been really, really bad. But 63 2/3 innings at AAA this year, only struck out 19.5% of hitters. Didn't allow a lot of power, but that's not really something that's going to make me want to roster someone. I think if I'm going cheap, I'd rather go to Hernandez or Mills if that game plays.
Same. Hernandez as well. I mean, and it's not just like a box score thing where you're looking at the last two. I mean, his underlying metrics, he's going to give up some hard contact, but the K rate, it's hard to find 28% K percentage at 6,200 on just about any slate, let alone a 5-gamer. So that could be very interesting to see how that ends up breaking down for him. Let's talk bats, because that's really what we're looking at here from the White Sox side, going up against both of those guys. Tim Anderson all the way up to 6.1K. Cesar Hernandez, I don't really know where his lineup spot. He's been fluctuating heavily between the 1 and the 7 hole. I don't really think it changed his ownership for the showdown. Perhaps it does on a 5-gamer here, where people are more inclined to get up top there. I should be in the 2 hole once again here. But Andrew Vaughn as well, Winyard, Eloy Jimenez double donged on a day that I did not need him to double dong. That was not great. Could have used that pretty much the entire last week that I was throwing money at this guy. But White Sox, how do they look on this slate?
I think they look good. They also could have Luis Robert back, who's only 3,400 on DraftKings. He's supposed to be activated today, according to Tony La Russa. So it makes that lineup even deeper. And we talked about Burrows not being very good. Barnes also, not very good. So I think either way, regardless of who's pitching out of those guys, it sets up nicely. This isn't a spot where I think, the opener is bad, but then he's being followed up by a guy that's difficult to hit. I think it's just going to be a good matchup for the White Sox regardless. So, again, kind of just playing it by ownership. I don't want to say, oh yeah, I'm jamming in the White Sox regardless, because I'm not. But assuming they get a little bit less ownership than someone like the Yankees, I think they're going to look really, really good here. And if Robert's back, it does just make that lineup even better and easier to stack too, because he's really inexpensive.
God, they're going to take Adam Engel out of this lineup. Like that's crazy. You have to, though. I mean, it's obviously Luis Robert. You're talking about top, 2019 prospect or 2020. Yeah, he was just unbelievable out of the gate here too for the White Sox. They get him and Eloy back, completely different context. Like, they're just phenomenal hitters. And Adam Engel, though, I'm just looking at some of his numbers. It's more of just like, for me, being interested in how deep the Chicago White Sox are in the outfield now. Andrew Vaughn, of course, just hits balls really, really hard. Adam Engel, not nearly as much, but on the season, just seems like he's still getting it done. 870 OPS, sprint speed 29.7. So that's a ridiculous mark to see over on Baseball Savant. So I gotta say, congratulations, White Sox. I hate you. We're going to have a lot of issues going forward the next couple seasons trying to beat you guys out. Hopefully we can re-sign Cruz next year. It sounds like he still might come back over, but you guys don't want to hear me talk about Twins baseball. In that context, let's talk about it from a DFS angle today. Lucas Giolito, if he's going to have problems, you got to think Kepler Polanco. That's kind of where it starts at. I'd like to see Donaldson in that lineup if we're going to be targeting it. 4.2 implied runs isn't 0, so that's a plus. It's 85 degrees there in Minnesota. How do you kind of look at this team and say, all right, Lucas Giolito is going to be such and such owned, I should play them, or Lucas Giolito is going to be, unowned or like comparatively to the other pitchers, and I don't want to play Minnesota?
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of my interest in the Twins is going to come down to what Giolito's projected ownership is compared to guys like Peralta and Castillo, because if Giolito is projected to be over-owned compared to his chances of success, then I'm going to end up playing the Twins, especially in larger field tournaments, because it is a smaller slate. We're going to have 4 or 5 games, or 3, depending what site we're talking about and what the weather does. So the ownership's going to play like a little bit bigger role for me because there's just less opportunity cost to going to a lower projected offense that is facing a popular pitcher. So if Giolito is getting a lot of ownership, like probably more than he should be, then I think you can go to the Twins. You do have a 2K price tag on Larnack. He struggled in the majors, but 2K for one of the top hitting prospects is pretty good. Sano is cheap. Polanco's cheap, Rooker's cheap. Kepler's priced up, but I'm willing to pay that salary too. So again, it's not that it's a good spot for Minnesota. It's more so how much ownership's going to Giolito, and is he going to grade out as a pitcher that I want to stack against just based on ownership?
Play Peralta, play Castillo. That'd be your kind of path to getting super different. 10-5, 10K, and play some Twins bats. That seems like a fun way to go. Well, I'm looking at this weather now in Chicago. It is looking very, very questionable. I think I'm on Loco's side where I would be surprised if this game played. If they do play it, they're going to have to wait a while because it's raining there now. It's going to keep raining. It's not a pretty game. So if we lose Freddie Peralta, Lucas Giolito ownership, I think the Twins become much more enticing to stack up. But they will be higher owned still just because you turn 5 games down to 4 and they won't be completely unowned, but comparatively, I think they'll look pretty decent. Favorite bat from the White Sox side?
If Robert's in the lineup at 3,400, I think it's him. Just he's kind of getting that like Eloy Jimenez treatment when he first came back and was really underpriced.
Not 2K though.
Yeah, but 3,400 is still bad. Yeah. But yeah, he's not 2,500. But outside of that, I think it's Anderson or Abreu just because they're really, really good.
Somebody just brought up BVP. Ben, I've seen you in chat. You're a good person. Don't talk about BVP. It's not a real thing. Kepler's a good hitter up against righties. So yeah, play Kepler regardless. Anything else here from this Twins game?
No, I think that's about it. Just a lot of it comes down to ownership. I think it's a really, really good spot for the White Sox. It's not a good spot for the Twins, but if Giolito's pulling a ton of ownership, then they'll look good in tournaments.
Jordan Klein, do we have Hall of Fame here today? We do not have Hall of Fame. All I know is it would just be Adam Scherer there, plastered on everything. NFL preseason, MLB. Did you win anything else last week, or is that it? I feel like there's something I'm missing.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I had a few MLB ones, but
you had a few. We have Hall of Fame at Deeper Dive. Ooh, okay. So coming up later, we'll have some Deeper Dive showing up. Deeper Dive show. It's a weird schedule day. So the DraftKings slate starts at 6:10. So be on the lookout for that. If you think that this is a regular Monday or a regular MLB slate where it starts at 7:05 p.m., you are sadly mistaken. DraftKings is going to lock then. We are going to start our Deeper Dive coverage right after that here today. And then we're going to run it into the Live Before Lock show right before the FanDuel slate. So we're going to kind of skip out on the one game. There's a 2-hour break between it. So I think it makes a little bit of sense here. Cincinnati and Cleveland. We can talk maybe some game theory as that game is going on in regards to the DraftKings lineup. I think that's what most people are playing, but FanDuel still has some good contests over there as well. We'll get you ready for the 4-gamer. And I know Adam cannot wait to talk about it. So I'm looking forward to that show for sure. There's one other thing I was supposed to do. Oh, that's what it is. MLB player props tool. So this thing is just ridiculous. Like it's gotten to be to the point. I was just printing money over on a couple of different sites. Again, I'm here in California. I have to kind of do different things a little bit differently. And if you are in a legal sports betting state, your life is just better than mine. And I have to do other things. But either way, the MLB player props tool is just printing money right now. I mean, some of these K props are just so perfectly done. We got Joe Musgrove right now, expected ROI on 6.5 for his strikes right now. It's 28% expected ROI that we have going for him. Number 1 on the board. That gives me promise. I think we probably got everything updated here at the end, Adam. We might be able to talk about some ownership. No, I digress. It's just the player props tool that's updated right now. Luis Castillo, the under is 6.5 for him, 59% expected win percentage, 13% expected ROI. I'm telling you, when you see something like 28%, head over to your books right now, find Musgrove, hit that 6.5 right now, so long as the prop odds are sitting in that minus 121 range or a little bit better. I mean, you are looking at a really positive ROI bet by looking at that. MLB player prop home runs as well. So we can basically group them and look at kind of who the best home run hitters are on a given slate. 24% right now for Franmil Reyes, Joey Gallo, 24%, some of those guys. The Franmil Reyes one at 380 plus 380, 16% ROI. So that looks like a pretty positive bet to be getting to as well. I'm telling you, if you constantly are just simply going over to that, and it's still free right now, if you're using that tool on the daily, you have a leg up on the sports books. You're going to be able to win over the long haul just by finding some of those positive ROI bets. Don't bet everything. Bet the best plays on the board and use the player props tool to help you. All right. We got one game to get to, 9 minutes. We've got forever here. Maybe I'll talk really, really slowly. I'll do like did you ever see Zootopia?
No.
Oh, there's this scene with the sloth in Zootopia. Ha. There it is. Okay, that's all I have. That was me reenacting Zootopia. But here we are. I'll send you the YouTube clip. It's phenomenal. It's really, really funny. Plus, you're not laughing. Miami plus 221 at San Diego, 7.5 total runs here in this one. Zach Thompson on one side of the mound. I got to say, he's probably the guy on the board today that I'm the most interested to see where his ownership comes in at, because up until recently, the guy had just been pretty nails in his early stints here in the majors. We're going back to Atlanta, Cubs, Washington. I mean, some massive, massive outings, and it's really slid off of late, started to regress back towards the mean, but still a 2.53 ERA here on the season, a 1.10 whip, 7,200 on DK. Looks like an enticing 72 on every other game. Basically, I think the right way of saying this is every other game on this slate looks like it's 80 plus degrees, phenomenal hitting environment. And of course, the Padres still have 4.7 implied run total, but I kind of like targeting them with no Fernando Tatis. And again, it's 70 degrees in San Diego, not the best hitting conditions. How do you feel about Zach Thompson as an unowned flyer?
Yeah, a lot's going to matter on ownership there because, for example, like if he's pulling similar ownership to Jamison Taillon, I would just rather go to Jamison Taillon. But if, hypothetically, Taillon's getting 35% and Thompson's getting like 8%, then Thompson starts to look pretty good, even though it is a tough matchup with San Diego, just because, again, it's a smaller slate. There's not a lot of opportunity cost, and you do need some cheap arms. So, I'd be willing to take the risk on a low owned Thompson. He's been good overall this year. Like you said, he has struggled recently, and probably that was coming. He wasn't going to keep striking out, 27, 28% of guys and putting up these great numbers. I do think that he's probably better than his minor league numbers suggest, because you did see an uptick in strikeout percentage kind of as he went through the minors. It kind of seems like he changed something, because his strikeout numbers just really changed. So I think it's really just an ownership game here. Like, it's a tough matchup against the Padres, even without Tatis. I wouldn't be looking at Thompson in cash games, obviously, but if he's just going to get a lot less ownership than someone like Jamison Taillon, I think he becomes interesting in tournaments.
Let's go to the Joe Musgrove side, because I think we're looking at probably the highest owned pitcher on the slate in Joe Musgrove, especially at his ownership. And of course, Joe Musgrove has been maybe the most frustrating dude to get right here of late. I decided to try to fade him against Colorado. That went very nicely for his 39.4. He tuned up 11 Ks in that spot. Came out a little bit back down to earth against Oakland, but still decent. 6 innings pitched, only 1 home run given up there in that spot. Let's see. Yeah, 1 earned run total there, 5 Ks. Ks haven't been there, but 2.87 ERA, under a 1 whip. He's a very good pitcher going up against a very, very bad team at hitting baseballs.
Yeah. As much as I kind of hate Joe Musgrove right now, it's a really, really good spot for him. The price tag's really reasonable. I assume he's going to be the highest owned pitcher on the slate, because he's not quite as expensive as the Giolito, Peralta, Castillo group. He's got a phenomenal matchup against the Marlins. The weather is better for pitching than most of these other games, as you alluded to. Just a really, really, really good spot for Musgrove. In tournaments, that probably means I end up underweight and getting more of those other top tier pitchers. But I think in cash, you should be getting to Musgrove probably without question. And, there's, as long as the rest of your lineup is low owned, you can still play him in tournaments as well.
Chet Danquist said Adam has better eyes than Lofty.
Yeah, no, I already told Lofty.
You already told him? You screenshot it? It was up like less than a minute ago. What kind of a sick, what in the world already? God, Adam, you surprise me every single day with the things that you do. All right. Let's look at the Miami side. Is there one bat? So if Jazz Chisholm is not in the lineup, I mean, Jesus, but I don't want to play any righty up against Joe Musgrove, but there's not really a choice for this Miami team. I mean, it's going to be Rojas, Aguilar, Princeton, Anderson, Alfaro. I mean, this is just disgusting. Like Joe Musgrove, how does he not just destroy this team today?
Yeah, and the thing is too, and I mentioned this on a show, I don't remember if it was with you or Greg. It's kind of like, there's reason to just full stack Miami here and hope that a really popular Joe Musgrove has a bad game. But the issue is that it seems like when you have a team like Miami, where it's just like that obvious of a spot where, yeah, Joe Musgrove is great, everyone's going to play him, you still end up getting like 5-6% ownership going to guys on Miami. And at that point, it's just, especially on a smaller slate, at that point, it's kind of just like, yeah, okay, that's defeating the point. I don't want to play the Marlins when I still have to compete with 5 or 6% of the field if they do well. So the ownership matters on Miami. If, assuming they do get something like 5-6%, I'll probably just stay away from them and not bother. If they were getting, 1-2%, then I'd be interested in just stacking them and hoping Musgrove somehow pitches poorly.
And of course, the Padres kind of round everything out here for us today. Tommy Pham, Adam Frazier, just up at the top of that lineup here too. The National League starting second baseman in the All-Star game, Adam Frazier, definitely shouldn't, whatever. It doesn't matter. Adam Frazier's still up there. Jake Cronenworth had one of the sickest plays that I've seen in a while. That shortstop grab that he had last night, or yesterday afternoon, should I say. It was a ridiculous throw down to first too. The play itself to get to it was one thing, but the throw was another thing. I mean, the guy's just ridiculous. Also,
are you talking about Machado or Cronenworth?
Jake Cronenworth.
Oh, okay.
Cronenworth is a ridiculous magician. They call it the Crone Zone in San Diego. The announcer does. That's maybe the worst nickname ever, but he had a phenomenal play at shortstop. He's been playing a lot more there. And now he has that shortstop eligibility, which really helps out to make lineups work a little bit easier over on DK. But I don't love this team going up against Zach Thompson, and it'll really matter on ownership. I got to assume the Sox, Yankees, and Brewers are all higher owned, and Cincinnati for sure. So as long as they're like 5th or 6th on the board, I'll probably get there. But otherwise, probably going to be a pass because they seem like they're just a little bit over-owned just about every slate, especially considering the hitting conditions. But how do you feel about the Padres in this spot?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing you said. Like, I would much rather be going to the Reds or the Yankees or the White Sox in terms of just chances of success. But I think that's going to be the common opinion as well. And everyone else is going to be there too. So I think there is a chance that you just see like the Yankees, the White Sox, and the Reds all being either owned where they should be or being overowned. And maybe the Padres slip through the cracks a little bit because it's not as good a spot against Thompson. It's not as good hitting weather, but it's still a pretty good offense, even without Tatis. So, like, ideally, the field just isn't on one of those other 3 teams, and I get to play them. But if they are there, I don't mind going to the Padres.
We have a Dan Strafford sighting in chat. Oh, my goodness. Good to see you, dude. What's up? I just remember listening to the podcast back in the Fan Vice days. He just did such a good job. So hope you're well, Dan. What was his intro that he had on the podcast every single time?
And the way we go.
And away we go. I was going to say, in the event, dude, I remember just listening to that. He really got me into MLB DFS. He was just always enthusiastic. So quick shout out for Dan. Thank you so much for getting me into these streets because I would not be here without you. And so, yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. Didn't expect to see that name showing up in chat. So wanted to give him a quick shout out.
Yeah, he never misses a chance to make fun of the name of the show that I briefly had at FanVoice.
Adam Bomb.
Yeah.
Did you come up with that?
No.
Yeah. Adam Bomb. If it was like Atomic Bomb or something, or Atom, trying to figure out how that would even work. Somebody needs to be reverse engineered fired from that, but I guess that doesn't necessarily work unless we're like in Doctor Strange, where we can just bend time and do what we want. But anyway, anything else to kind of round out this game for us here as we close it out?
No, I think that's about it.
All right. Well, that does it for us. That was 5 games. We filled up the full hour, so we get to keep our jobs. I'm pretty excited about that. Of course, as I was saying before, we have a strange day of slates. So that's 6:10 p.m. start time. We've got for the DK slate. We're going to start a show up right after that for the deeper dive, leading you guys up to the 4 games that are going on in the evening. We'll have that for the deeper dive, and then the live before lock show will come on right up after that, leading you up to the 8:05 lock time for the FanDuel slate and for the rest of the DK games. But until then, Adam, any final words for the people?
I'll be back at I don't know, whatever, sometime for the games. I'm not really sure exactly when that's going to be, but yeah, I'll be back for a show later talking about some number of games. And yeah, it's just overall, it's a slate where I think ownership's going to make a huge, huge difference.
All right, we just got to stop the stream. The lack of professionalism is apparent. Everybody, have a fantastic day. Can't wait to see you guys later. Best of luck tonight.